Our West Coast correspondent joins us, Travis Lulay, bound for the Canadian Football Hall of Fame, joins us from the Lions Surrey practice facility. Good morning, Travis. How are you, sir?
Happy Monday, guys. I'm all right. How are you guys doing?
Hey, good. You know, with this new role of yours, did you travel? Were you here on the weekend?
No, I was not. I have not traveled to an away game yet. I've had weekends at home in the summer, which feels oddly very strange still to me, but good. No, so I wasn't in Regina.
Probably why Kevin Glenn's like, I'm not coming out of retirement. I like this too much, is what KG's telling us.
Yeah, he's having fun. I see his social media feed. He seems to be smiling aplenty.
Yeah. Travis, your compadre, your colleague, Mike Riley, was not. What was your take on the football game here Saturday night?
Well, you know what? I thought it was a lot better effort, particularly from the offensive side of the ball than the previous game, right? In the Edmonton game, those guys got beat up and the offensive line was much maligned. And I know there's still some criticism of the offensive line, but, you know, to be honest, there's two all-stars out of the starting lineup. Hunter Stewart had back spasms. J.S. Waugh ended up leaving the game. Philip Norman was making his first start. And frankly, outside of kicking field goals where they had opportunities to score touchdowns early in that football game, the production was relatively good on offense. There was 465 plus yards of offense. Mike threw for 340, completed 70%, right? So, you know, they won the time of possession. So there's a lot of things that you look for in terms of an offensive line group. I think Brandon Rutley averaged around 6 yards a carry. So if the O-line's playing garbage, you can't produce those numbers. So those guys, I thought they battled through some injuries and were better. But again, the takeaway is a couple big things from the game were not scoring touchdowns when they had opportunities early in the football game. Obviously, there was a special teams momentum shift right before the half that I thought was really big in this game. And then the fourth quarter, Saskatchewan offense just kind of won the game.
Travis Taylor Shire here. In talking with Cody Fajardo this year, since he's become the starting quarterback for the Riders, he credits guys like you and guys like Ricky Ray for showing him the way in terms of what it takes to be a starter in the CFL. What have you seen from him so far this year, and what makes you think he can be the next star in this league?
Well, for one, this last game was really important for Cody Fajardo, and it didn't come at a good time for the Lions to see Cody bounce back so well. But coming off your first real adversity as a pro, and you know, I had even spoken to Cody after those, you know, those two games. He had huge games, and then there was a disappointing effort at home, right, where Calgary beat up on Saskatchewan, and you know, the quarterback gets some of the credit for that. I think he threw a pick six in that game, or the blame, I should say, right? So to go into a bye week coming off of that kind of performance and then to respond, and Cody played a very good football game, I thought. You know, he averaged well over 10 yards per attempt. You know, sometimes we get enamored with the final number. I think because his stats showed 275, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Cody fell victim, by the way, to what I think is the worst statistic in football is giving a quarterback an interception if you throw a pick on a 2-point play. You have to make an effort to throw the ball into the end zone, right? That's not a normal interception, but it still goes on your stats that way. It should just be a team 0 for 1. That's a whole other story. But I thought it was really important for Cody to come back and respond. And that's how you win guys over, like really win guys over in the locker room, is when you battle through a tough spot and everyone's in there with you. And then you come back and say, I'm going to show up the next week. So Cody did that. And so that was really important for him, and, you know, still being a young tenured guy in his starting role.
Travis Lulay, our West Coast correspondent, with us from the Lions practice facility. I know Gary Echeverry watches every day. You would know Etch, the longtime CFL defensive coordinator from his home in Washington. Yeah. He has long told me that offenses sort of choke up when they get in the red zone. And I just look at what the Lions did the other night with Sergio Castillo, 4 field goals. Since you're quarterbacking it all, what changes when you get in the red zone for an offense? Mentally or playbook-wise, or what have you?
Yeah, no, so, you know, there does need to be, call it a red zone mindset. It ought to shift, right? And the margin for error becomes smaller. The field's a little bit tighter. Obviously, there's still room to operate in the CFL. But it really should be distinctly different offensive football and mindset when you get down there. And, you know, you got to credit the defense too, right? Like the defense obviously changes once the opponent gets into the score zone. It's no longer as acceptable to give up 5 or 6 yards because those are huge yards when you get down inside, say the 15-yard line. So there is a little bit different. You always see it every single film breakdown you get. There's a little bit a different percentage of, say, man coverage or pressure or whatever it is to do whatever you can to keep the opponent out of the red zone, or out of the end zone. So there's kind of a game within the game that exists outside of just the normal 20 to 20 offensive and defensive play calling. So yeah, it was unfortunate, particularly in hindsight, for the Lions. I mentioned all those yards that accumulated by the end of the stat sheet. You don't feel great about it when you end up kicking field goals. And I specifically remember a 2012 Western final that we lost at home against Calgary. We kicked 6 field goals in that game. And you say, we lose the game by 5 points. You say if one of those, 2 of those times we're down there where the game's entirely different. So, that's hindsight again. But I know that's something that they're going to be really mindful of going forward. You can't have wasted opportunities when you get down the ed zone, because frankly, in the CFL, you don't know how many shots you're going to get. If you have 3 chances in the red zone the first quarter, you might not get down there again until the fourth quarter, right? So if you coming away with 20 plus points is a lot different than, say, 9 points. And that's where the Lions sat.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, now getting ready for, the same opponent in back-to-back weeks, what changes? How do you move forward, and how do you kind of early on start looking at next week or this weekend?
Yeah, you have no choice, right? I think the big picture thing here is, right now, you guys felt it. There was very much a sense of desperation, almost a must-win thing. You're playing a home and home. You're playing a one-win opponent in your division, and you're playing at home. That was the one of the three games between the Riders and Lions this year that's going to be played in Regina, right? So, Rider Nation needed that win, and the team showed up and got it done. So now can the Lions do the same? Backs are completely against the wall, right? The team's 1-5. This wasn't the vision for anybody, but there is still plenty of football left. But you got to get it going now. And in the case of the Lions, they've already lost what would be potentially a season series tiebreaker to the Edmonton Eskimos, and a loss against the Riders this week would mean the same. That you'd lose the season series to Saskatchewan right off the bat. A win against the Riders this week, and now you have the same number of wins. You play them one more time later in the season, and it's back at BC Place, and you get a little bit of momentum going into a bye. So there's a ton of reasons the Lions ought to be motivated to win this football game outside of just the pure record. But it is always kind of a unique thing when you play this back-to-back scenario, because like I mentioned, there's a lot of good things in that football game, but at the end, you're going, we still lost. We didn't win the fourth quarter, the critical time of the game. We gave up a big momentum play on special teams, which has been a little bit of an Achilles heel of the Lions team so far. So there's things that are really important that's going to need to be corrected. You can imagine they're going to put in maybe an extra red zone period or 2 this week, and J-Jack will be doing everything he can to dial up red zone offense to make sure those 3s turn into 6s. But yeah, it's like I said, it's always a unique thing doing this back-to-back thing, because what worked well last week might not work well this week, because you might get some different looks. And so it's the game within the game. The Riders have to feel good about the way they ended the game, but there's some things they're going to want to do better, right? And so you just really have to, in my experience dealing with these back-to-backs, you have to get really internally focused and worry more just about what we're doing in our room, and then worrying about, they might do this, or we beat them on this, so they might have some. Don't worry about that so much, as to make sure you know what you're doing. You feel good about your plan going in.
I could go on all day about this. I love hearing from you, Travis. I'll just ask one more about the 2011
Sure.
Lions. They're the benchmark, right? Everybody talks about it across the league, about the 1-5 team that rebounded. It was your coming out party too. But I remember so distinctly, you signed, I wrote about this yesterday, Tad Cornegay and Arlen Bruce III. And maybe there was more, I don't know, but from the outside, that's what it looked like, just sparked you guys and took you over the top. But if the O-line's the problem, I don't think there's any Hoggies sitting on the street. Like the same formula then, I don't think is going to work now.
No, but the thing that you can take away from that is that it wasn't dramatic wholesale change that made a big difference for us, right? You mentioned the 2 guys; those were it. Those were the 2 guys that we brought in later in the year. We brought in Kareem Smith to be another rotational piece on the defensive line. But what bringing in Tad Cornegay allowed Corey Banks and Ryan Phillips to move back to their more natural positions that they played historically. And then on the offense side of the ball, Arlen Bruce, he became such a nice compliment to G-Roy, because that year it was G-Roy and 4 younger guys in the other receiving spots. So once Arlen came in, it made Sean Gore a better player, made Marco Iannuzzi, Akeem Foster better young players. So that was really it. And then Khalif Mitchell came off, who was on our team. He was in-house, but he was on the practice squad. He came in and started making hay on the defensive line, right? And so those were really the changes. Other than that, we kind of stuck to the game plan and pulled through the muck. And it takes so much mental and emotional courage or strength to be able to say, we still like a lot about what we're doing, even though we haven't got the end result. So there's an element of that here that, look, it is different. The scenarios are a bit different, but you can't just go, oh, we got to cut half the starting offense and bring in another 6 new guys and the same on defense. That's not how you make change, particularly lasting change like we were able to do in that 11 season. So I'm curious. They're going to have a few tweaks, I'm sure, that are going to be working to find those things that just spell the chemistry that they need to find some wins. But it's certainly time to see some of those things happen.
Travis, it's just a treat talking CFL with you. Thanks for this, and enjoy the game on Saturday.
Love it, guys. Always do.
All right. Our West Coast correspondent, Travis Lulay, out in Vancouver. And 2 things. One, my Lions fans' friends, one of which is Greg Mayer, the therapist for the Pats, says you guys talk more Lions than the Vancouver media does. So that's cool. Rod Pedersen Show, making the CFL great again. And the other thing that I kind of scratched the surface on in the opening segment was the Lions fans that were here on the couch the other day. Do you know what happened to them?
No.
One had his hat, the same guy, he had his hat knocked off by a Rider fan and his beer intentionally kicked over by a Rider fan at the game. You're looking at me.
Yeah.
It's horrible. I wouldn't want it to happen to me. I warned them. Listen, it's a mean place for a visiting fan. I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong. It's just be on guard. Okay? And secondly, don't be mad at all Rider fans, because all fan bases have idiots. So don't paint them. Like, I've been going around and around and around on this for decades in my role. I've had it happen to me. I've seen it happen to Rider fans. How about that 9-year-old kid in Winnipeg that got assaulted at the Banjo Bowl, and the kid was from Winnipeg. He just happened to be wearing a green shirt. It happens. And for me to go on here and even ask you guys to implore people to smarten up at games, it's not going to matter, especially when you get a couple bowls of loudmouth soup in them.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.